What's up, folks? How's it going? Welcome back to the stream. It's Tuesday. We're getting tactical, and we're back to what is effectively our regularly scheduled broadcasting, everybody, because the data slate has dropped. Events are now using it, and we can talk about what looks to be the 40k meta for at least the next 3 months, which is very exciting because we've had some really cool developments that I'm not sure everyone entirely saw coming. So it's going to be a lot to talk about. We got a ton of lists this weekend. A lot of interesting things actually coming to the top, especially at smaller events. Some kind of, I think, foreseeable results from the larger ones, but we definitely had some standouts at the 5-0 in little local GTs. And yeah, hope everyone had a good weekend, by the way. Anybody play some games for the weekend? By the way, it was Halloween as well, if you're into that kind of thing. Hope everyone had a good Halloween time and dressed up in some fun costumes and, you know, had a good one. I didn't play any events over the weekend. I actually had one scheduled, but ended up being, it looks very small. It was very far away. I didn't end up going. But I did play some practice games with my locals. I posted about them on Twitter and in the Discord. So if you don't check both those out, you should. But I played some Behemoth Tyranids. I'm really experimenting with some Tyranid lists now that we're in kind of a new era and you know, a whole new meta game. And I think the classic Tyranid lists obviously don't work anymore. So you know, trying to play Kraken. I think there's legs to Behemoth, especially against a lot of the like Chaos Space Marine and not Blood Angels, yeah, Chaos Demon armies out there. But you know, I'll have to find out. How are Nids doing? Just fine. Just totally okay, which I think is pretty good. They're, I think, where we've anticipated them to be, which is, you know, sort of near the top, but not at the top, which I think is a just fine place for them to be. Convinced that the Necron's nerf wasn't necessary? I mean, yes and no. I think that it wasn't necessary from a balance standpoint, and I wish something else had been done to Necrons. I think Necrons are fine as it is, but they're kind of like, they're relegated to mediocrity. Not that I think that's terrible, because, you know, I don't know. They've been in a weird place for a really long time. They're just one-dimensional, and I wish what they had done is bring more effective game plans to the table for Necrons. They do have that new Army of Renown coming out. I don't know if that's going to change things, for certainly not in a power level standpoint, but it's definitely going to give them more interesting lists to play with. I don't think they're more powerful than the standard Necron build, but they're pretty similar. Would like old Monk Ka back? I don't know Towning's any help, chat. I mean, I think like a lot of these factions are like really in around the same boat where they can compete right now with, you know, things like factions like Tau, factions like Necrons. They, you know, they might be a little bit one-dimensional, but they can compete, and they're playing around the same power level that most other factions are. So, you know, I don't know if we need to like dive too deep into like, oh, you know, what should have happened or what did happen. I do think, going back to the Necron change, what was that they wanted to change the characters mostly for the sake of mechanical consistency with the rest of the game, because 99% of the time, unless it's a very special case, characters do not affect themselves with their own abilities. And Necrons was like the one exception to that, where especially the Silent King, right, could target himself with his command phase abilities and affect himself with his own 3 auras, which is, you know, basically not the case for any other character in the game. The only other character off the top of my head, I think like the Supreme Commanders typically affect themselves with like a reroll 1s, right? Like Abaddon, the Be'lakor, maybe Guilliman. It would be interesting to like make a list of characters that, but they're not full reroll auras, and they don't affect themselves with their plus or their command phase targeting. I guess they do, but I think that it's probably just for the sake of consistency. The real sad part, I think, is the Catacomb Command Barge. I think that was the one that you saw because it got core keyword, and now people are just going to cut it, and they're still going to play the Silent King because he's great, but that poor CCB is getting thrown in the garbage, which is very sad. Yeah, a lot of them can target themselves with rerolls, because they target like a faction character, but nobody has core targeted abilities that can target themselves. I don't know what a good analog is. Like Tyranids, right? Tyranids have a ton of command phase targeted abilities, all of which target core, and none of which can target characters. And that's the same for Necrons. And it was just weird that Necrons like had that effect, but could hit themselves with it. I don't know. I imagine that was the thinking behind the nerf there. But to be honest, I don't think it was like that big of a nerf. It just makes your secondary slightly worse in a lot of situations, or in some very specific situations where you're relying on the Silent King to get through weird profile matches to get Code of Combat. Otherwise, it just kind of dampens your damage output a little bit, which I think is mostly fine. That said, I think Necrons were they were at this like sort of upper mid tier anyway to begin with, and people were so freaked out about Necrons. I was just having this discussion with some local players over the weekend, and they were saying like, well, Necrons are the best faction, like hands down. It's just that nobody plays them. I'm like, you're wrong. You're just wrong. Their win rate is not good. It's around a coin flip, and if good players thought that they would automatically win with them, they would be playing them. And the people who are playing them are going like X and 1, X and 2, and getting killed by bad matchups because their list is really skewy. So I think, I agree. I don't think the Necron nerf was necessarily needed. I think I would have liked to have seen like the priorities in the faction shift, but I don't think that the faction was really needed any changes. Abaddon's reroll one is core only? Okay. All right. So maybe it's just Bellacore, who's a weirdo. But Wes, yeah, so I was playing Warriors in... what do you call it? In Spore Assists for a while, basically for the same reason. Just because giving your opponent, like you would, a lot of times, at least in the Leviathan list, you had to give your opponent something to chew on so that your big warrior bricks could deliver. I don't know if it's as necessary anymore, to be honest. I think Tyranids play like a much more 8th edition style game where they play like a hit and run game where they try to keep themselves constrained. They take what they can and they don't really give up too much. Leviathan gave them this Crusher Stampede style list where they just like waddled up the table and did things to you. And I don't think that's the case anymore. Tyranids are like wildly easy to kill outside of maybe Carnifex builds. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting and cool, and I'm kind of excited that the faction that Leviathan got turbo nerfed because it was stupid. It was brainless to play, and I think it's going to make the faction much more interesting. So. Yay! Anyway, what site is this from? Let me see if my command is still up, chat. It used to be ! List could get in there, but it's Discount Games Incorporated is the name of the website. My bot might be dead. Let me just turn it back on. Oh, that's not what I wanted to go to. My poor bot turns off sometimes. Nurgle M bot's here. Pop-up bot Nurgle. Yeah, this is a website. It just takes usually top 5 or top 8. It's usually top 1 if you're 20 players, top 3 if you're 30 plus, top 5 if you're larger than that, and then top 8 from super majors. And it just posts them. And it has entries for Age of Sigmar. There's some data for the Star Wars games. There's a lot of War Machine and Hordes Crisis Protocol as well. So if you like just peeking through competitive metagames, check out this website. It's also an online store, so that's good. They don't sponsor or anything, but I am good friends with the owner, so that's why that's one of the reasons I use the site a lot. So for transparency. But yeah, let's talk about some lists, chat. We had a couple of big events over the weekend. US Open Kansas City was this past weekend, and I made a video about that yesterday about Zach Kerstutter's Blood Angels list and how cool it is that Blood Angels, or any Space Marine subfaction really was doing well. Blood Angels in particular, though, and to be honest, Blood Angels had a really good weekend actually. So one thing that may have occurred, and I talked about some of the reasons that this might have happened in that video, was that there may be some influences of the. I think I'm gonna rearrange my camera here a little bit. There may have been some influences from the Dataslate that gave Blood Angels more bonuses than we considered, and I think one of those may be the Tyranid nerfs, because Blood Angels had a absolutely atrocious win rate against Tyranids. It was so bad, and Tyranids getting the nerf hammer means that Blood Angels Tyranids were not only hugely popular, right, because they were so good. And they also had this particularly good matchup into Blood Angels in specific. So you had a bad matchup that was like in the metagame, and like 20% of people were playing it. So your faction was just trash for a while. That going away, and the army having a pretty playable matchup into Chaos Demons and Chaos Space Marines, is a pretty big deal and not really something we considered. One thing that's part of the discourse, though, and I think that's really interesting, is that a lot of people have pointed out that the Chaos Space Marine lists that are being played right now are Thousand Sons and Emperor's Children. And if people switched to Creations of Bile, we may actually see that flip on its head. Because Creations of Bile can still, take Flamers and take all of these allies that Chaos Space Marines are relying on, but they also basically automatically win any melee fight because all of their stuff always gets to combat activate, which is so powerful, and especially because they have a lot of pretty high AP 2 damage weapons. They're very good at killing Blood Angel profiles. So I would be interested to see if people then take that and switch from Emperor's Children back to Creations of Bile and try to play that game, and that win rate actually flips on its head, because I think Chaos Space Marines are one of the most powerful sub-factions right now, or factions right now. So I don't know, chat. It's like an evolving metagame. It's super exciting. This is my favorite part of any new balance change. I think is like all of these little changes that people are going to be making to their armies before the meta settles. So I talked about Zach Kerstetter's list on the video. You can watch that video. I do a much better job talking about it there. We don't have to talk about it here. I also talked about both Brent Simon and Manny Chiba's list. Manny Chiba has played basically the Liam Vissel list that I talked about in my discussion with him. So you can go watch that video if you want me to go through this. And I did touch on Brent Simon's list in the Blood Angels video, but I do want to talk about it again because this list is really cool. So it's one Greater Demon. It's just Be'lakor. There's no Bloodthirster. There's no Lords of Change. A big Khorne detachment, so pure Khorne detachment, so we have access to the anti-fallback ability and the +1 attack. Warp Storm ability, that's what they're called. There are 30 Bloodletters and 2 Skull Cannons in this detachment, so we have a little bit of shooting, long-range shooting, sitting in the back, plus a Vanguard detachment out of Tzeentch. So we also have access to the Tzeentch +1 to cast, which is a really big deal. This one, we're basically having 2 Fate Skimmers stapled together to be to fill the role of one Lord of Change. I like the Lord of Change personally, but I think the 2 Fate Skimmers is just fine. And then we have 18 Flamers, because they're great, and 2 Burning Chariots, which you basically never see. But those guys are basically Exalted Flamers, standing on a fly profile. They aren't characters, unfortunately, so you can shoot them. But obviously they have a 3+ Demonic Invulnerability save, so shooting them doesn't do too much. And they just have the Exalted Flamer range profile, so 3 shots, Strength 9, EP 4, 3 damage, I believe. So pretty good at knocking down Terminators. You have the 2 Skull Cannons, pretty good at knocking down standard Marines, and then Flamer's good at killing everything, whatever else you want to attack. And Brent went 7-1 with this list, which is a super cool list. It's very technical. It's not just trying to slap you with Greater Demons and win by overpowering you. It's trying to play the mission. We're trying to trade Bloodletters for objectives and play a little bit more of a conservative game, and I think that's super cool. So congratulations, Brent. We got some Tyranid lists here. John Lennon, Dan Sammons, I believe, played very similar Tyranid lists. Now, one thing, I got a little bit of a clarification for this on the GW stream, because Games Workshop did stream the Kansas City Open. We have a lot of lists playing Spore Assists, and one thing that I was very confused about is how you can possibly get value, or decent value out of a Spore Assist in US Open terrain layouts, because they either eliminate your 12x12 ruin to get placed, or you place them so far in the back of the table that the 18-inch placement on their Spore Mines doesn't do too much. And I got clarification on the stream that they had a house rule that allowed you to play within 3 inches of terrain. So one thing I will caution people on is that we do see a lot of these Spore Assists popping up in Tyranid lists. Make sure you know what fortification rules your locals are playing with before you take a Spore Assist in your army, because based on either the fortification rules or the terrain layout, a fortification like a Spore Assist can have wildly different impact on the game. And so, yeah, I was watching people deploy Spore Assists inside buildings all weekend. I was like, what's going on here? Can we talk about this? this is not legal. And it's because they had a house rule for it. So I was confused about about people taking Spore Assist in Tyranid lists, and that would be the reason why. But there you go. So yeah, let's take a look at this list real quick here. So High Fleet Kraken, it's double patrol. So we unlock 2 Hive Tyrants. We have a Neurothrope with no Synaptic Tendrils, but I think we're kind of like running out of command points since we've taken 2 patrols. And Kraken tends to be very command point intensive because you have to be spending on... you're oftentimes spending on opportunistic advance every turn to get the 8-inch advance. Venom Thropes, Zone Thropes, Gargoyles in the troop slot, 2 units of 5 Raveners, Scything Talons, 1 with Scything Talons, 1 with Rending Claws. I love this. And I was actually considering how to kit out Raveners recently, and I kind of wanted 1 of each, and I like that we're moving to taking a combination of the different weapons. The Rending Claws on the charge are Strength 6, AP 5, so they're good at punching through, like, Armor of Contempt stuff, Sanguinary Guard, for example. The Scything Talons are 2 additional attacks, but only AP 1. So they're much better at killing, like, Eldar. They're much better against Harlequins, and I think there's an argument for both of them. Plus, not to mention the fact that you are in Kraken, so that all gets +1 AP. So that's what gets the Rending Claws to AP 5. Those are base AP 4. The Scything Talons are AP 1, they go to AP 2. So they're a little bit better. They're way worse against Space Marines, but they're a little bit better against lightly armored stuff. Art of War claims they measure distance from the Spore Assist to the actual wall, not the huge area terrain that's technically obscuring. Yeah. Yeah, that's I think what I saw, and that's what a lot of events have been moving towards, in order to make fortifications more playable. That's what I streamed with War Games Live. I streamed Battle for Salvation a couple weeks ago. That they used the exact same rule there too. Not technically the rules though, interestingly. Might be. It's like weird that US Open would make that a house rule and not just like. Like, it's US Open, right? Like, that's the GW format. Just put it in the Dataslate change. What are you doing, GW? Like, why are you house ruling your own rules? I don't know. It's weird. We got a unit of Biovores in this list. So we have a sort of maximum Spore Mine creation. And the interesting things I was seeing players do with these is basically, if they would have their Spore Assist cornered in the back somewhere, they could effectively assemble the Spore Assist and Biovore drops together into like a single, quote-unquote big unit of Spore Mines. But they would basically just like park it behind center table line of sight blocking terrain that was within, like 7-ish inches of the, or 8-ish inches of the edge of an objective. And basically like just bait their opponent, like, into moving out to the objective, and then they'd be able to come back and plow them for 1 billion mortal wounds, which made a ton of sense to me. I really liked that use case for those units. It's not just movement blocking for those guys anymore. We have a Winged Hive Tyrant, still taking Reaper of Obliterax here, which I think is fine. I actually, I was playing over the weekend. I took Reaper of Obliterax on my Foot Tyrant when I was playing it. I didn't end up get to use it, though. The Foot Tyrant doesn't get into melee that often. At least not when it's relevant. 3 Tyrant Guard, because we have the 2 Tyrants. You have to take those guys. Some Tyranid Warriors to pass the Synaptic Link. A Parasite of Mortrax, which I think is interesting. Probably mostly for the turn 1 banners drops, because he has Alien Cunning, so it can advance like 20 inches and then 22 inches and then drop banners. Basically, it also just flips an objective once per game. You just do the big advance, onslaught, charge, take an objective. You're even objective secured, and if you can ping the enemy unit and remove objective secured from them with the parasites, then you just steal their objective away. So that's pretty good. US put the terrain directly on the objectives open. Yeah, they were like, well, that's more of a guideline than it is an actual rule. And you're like, are we like pirates coding this right now? It's like they're more like guidelines anyway. Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird situation. Whatever. Should just get rid of the rule and let you put fortifications adjacent to terrain. 100%. Also, well, I think the problem there is that fortifications represent... There's 2 types of fortifications, right? There's the ones that are basically big vehicles that can't move, and then there's the ones that cannot be attacked. The problem is when you create literally impassable sections of terrain because you link the ones that can't be attacked, like webway gates, with pre-existing terrain. And if you give a 3-inch gap to that, it becomes more difficult to do. You just make every fortification attackable. It's like weird that some of them just become immortal when you place them on the table. And some of them, like, why is an Imperial bunker destructible, but like a battle sanctum isn't? Like, what's the difference? Like, one's a big building made out of rocks, and the other one's a big building made of concrete, and the concrete somehow makes it more susceptible to guns. Like, I don't know. It's just weird. All right, what else we got here? I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about... We have Thomas Reedy here with Heritage Astartes. We got Orks in 8th place. Sean Naden putting his Eldar away, interestingly. Harlequins being so strong, you'd think Sean Naden would be on a Harlequins kick, but nope, he's on Orks right now. But Thomas Reedy coming in with that Creations of Bile. The Dark Apostle, Master of Possession, Big Terminator of Brick, Mark of Slash, and Black Rune of Damnation. We have a Master of Executions with the Loke of the Black, and Flames of Spite, so doing a billion mortal wounds. Usually you see that on the Lord Discordant, but not today. 30 possessed, hot damn. So we are we are in no prisoner's heaven over here. 30 possessed and 10 Terminators. So we have 120 wounds of 3 wounders. Chaos Bikers. I love Chaos Bikers in Creations of Bile, just as like a problem solver. You can put some pretty good guns on them. They get Mark of Corn for the AP boost, I think, +1 AP on the charge. And then you can pay a CP to let them advance and charge, so they advance 20 and then charge, and they can just flip objectives really easily. Like if you have a little 5-man tactical squad, or you have like 10 chaff infantry, the bikers will just go in and just kill them, and you don't have to worry about it. And then 3 Chaos Spawn together, no individual Chaos Spawn, which is pretty interesting. And no Abaddon in this list. We're just taking possessed, so that's fun. Just all possessed. Put everything in the middle of the table and hope your opponent can't shoot you to death. Seems good. It seems like it works for them, too. And then let's talk about Sean Naden. Want to see some Hammerfall bunkers? Yeah. Shoot everybody in range and line of sight. Let's go. So Sean's playing, this is a little bit of an interesting list. It is a Goff's list, but it's more of a battle wagon rush than it is kill rigs. So it does have some Squig Hog boys, a Beast Boss and Squigosaur, Weird Boy. We do have Gaskell Thraka, bunch of Storm boys, some additional Squig Hog boys, but then 2 units of Mega Knobs, Beast Naga boys, and regular boys, and those are riding in battle wagons. So one of the battle wagons is open, which means I believe Gaskell can go into it. The other battle wagon can hold Mega Knobs. Can it hold all the Mega Knobs? Battle wagons. I think I swear every time a battle wagon shows up on a list, I have to look up exactly the like different tiers of their transport capacity is, because they change so easily when you start upgrading them. Yes, so they can hold 10 Mega Knobs, so you can put both units of Mega Knobs in, unless it has a kill cannon, chat, which fortunately it doesn't. It just has an ARD case, which means you can still put the Mega Knobs in it. Ooh, interesting, chat. The Slash bots came back, but the YouTube bot stopped them. Just to be clear, the Slash bots were here, but they have been waylaid. So good on Sean Naden. That's an interesting list. No kill rigs is certainly a different mood. Just focusing on the Mega Knobs and Gaskell is a little bit more interesting than normal. They also are on double Weird Boys as well, which I think is fun. One of them Fist of Gork, the other one also Fist of Gork. Oh, and Warpath, so he can buff the bigger units. Orc transports should be like con cars. Yeah, they can fit 1 unit full stop. No transport capacity, just a single, any size single unit. You should be able to fit other transports inside Orc transports, right? Am I right? Moving on to Dragon Slayer GT. This is relatively big. We had 2 undefeated players at the end of 5 rounds. Brendan Catalano. A little bit of an interesting Chaos Demons list here. Fate Scammer, Double Transweaver, Big Demonette Swarm. So 50 Demonettes alongside Nurglings, 2 units of Fiends, so 4 Fiends, excuse me. Those are pretty okay for like disrupting enemy casting because they have that cast debuff within 12-inch aura. Through 18 Flamers, as is to be expected. A Burning Chariot, 2 units of Fleshhounds. And yeah, we do have the Fate Scammer, so we can give the Flamers rerolls and +1 to wound. Yeah. And then everything else is basically just chaff to take up space. But the interesting thing about this kind of list with the Demonettes is that unlike a lot of Horde armies, they're pretty resilient against ranged attacks. Not super tough to kill, but a 4+ and like demonic invulnerability save makes it like really awkward to remove them. So unlike a lot of Horde mode armies, we're used to shooting them and removing units. The Demonettes are just like sometimes don't die. And then the fact that they also have 5+ in melee means that sometimes they stick in. If you're not particularly high volume attacks in melee, they oftentimes don't die and they obsec your objectives away. So speaking from experience, these armies, the Demonette units specifically, can be like really problematic to try to get rid of. Oh, it is 6 Fiends? Oh, okay. I got you, chat. Yeah, they're 35 points apiece, right? Yeah, that would make sense. Man, the demons, I think all the demons units read out that way, right? Because it says Flamers, 5 Flamers, but the Pyrocaster's also listed there too. Every time. Every time with the Battle Scribe format. And I guess this is the same for Fleshhounds too, right? 5 Fleshhounds, because it's a Gorehound and 4 Fleshhounds. That's a good call out. We also have the Horror Infestation, which I think will stack with the Fiend's aura, which is kind of fun. So, especially because there's a lot of armies that are relying on Mortal Wounds right now. Getting a bunch of, plus we have Fleshhounds too, who have a 3+ deny stratagem. You have a lot of ways to muck with opponents' psychic casting. So you have a lot of ways to like disrupt incoming Mortal Wounds. So you force them to fight into those 4+ and 5+ invulnerable saves. So that's pretty cool. Congratulations to Brendan Catalano for taking down with a really cool Demons list. Very different. And I think it's nice to see that, obviously Demons are propped up by the tentpole of Tzeentch Flamers, but the fact that Tzeentch Flamers are so powerful means that you can kind of do whatever you want with the rest of the army. And as long as you can fill in the gaps that Tzeentch Flamers leave you, the Tzeentch Flamers will basically just answer whatever questions you have. So you can play, if you want to play big stuff and use the Tzeentch Flamers to draw fire from them, you can do that. Or if you want to play little stuff and use the Tzeentch Flamers to kill the enemy big stuff, you can also do that fine. And that's pretty cool. I mean, that's the benefit of having a really broken unit in your codex, but it is what it is. We have a couple Imperial Knights lists here. Sure hope that this isn't a Freeblade Lance. It's not. It is 3 Warglaves, 1 Helverin, triple Big Knight, 1 Paladin, Crusader, and Gallant. A little bit more heavy than we typically see in the Imperial Knights lists. The second one, an X and 1 from Adam Napier. And this one, this is a little bit more standard. 1 Errant, 1 Crusader, plus 3 Warglaves. This one is a Freeblade Lance, so I have no idea what this does. Waggly Jack with the membership re-up. Thank you so much. Welcome to the membership. What I think is the best build for Leagues of Votann? That's an interesting question. I think that it probably focuses on the faster units. So I think you're on like 1 land fortress, and then you're 1 to 2 like larger units of pioneers, so you can you give your army reach. Because the problem is that if Leagues of Votann don't have you directly in front of them and in their line of sight, they can't really do anything to you. But the pioneers give you something to do because you can zip them around corners and actually shoot people, so removing units, and then force them to come forward into a position where you can counterattack with the land fortress and the shooting stuff. So I think it's 1 to 2 units of pioneers. It's the big land fortress. And then the rest is probably, I think, salt to taste. I think the Sagittarius ATVs are still good for much the same reason. They have an efficient damage output and they're fast. And then you can also bring Berserks to counterpunch, and then the your tax of Hearthkin Warriors for sure. I also think that the you know, the in here brick that does localized teleport to jump around can also kind of fill the position of those pioneers. And I talked about this a little bit in the I think in the Blood Angels video, even, because I was talking about Tzeentch Flamers. But if you're threatening, this is a big deal when dealing with deep strike units and units that have mid-game redeploys, where your opponent constantly has to feed you stuff to deal with that. They can't just let you redeploy anywhere, otherwise you get maximum value out of it. So unless they're not worried about the damage output of whatever's being redeployed, they have to constantly be screening out. And if you're an army that's relatively slow and focused on, you know, like either direct fire shooting or maybe like sort of fast melee, your opponent then has to move into your threat range in order to screen you. So you get to kill stuff. So your mid-game redeploy actually kind of nets you additional damage on your opponent's army. So that's another thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about units like those in here bricks. So that, I think, is also another possibility in the Leagues of Wotan. A couple Necron lists over here for Dragon's Lair. I think this one is... Look at that! Eternal Conquerors, Relentless Expansionist. Exciting. This one focusing on Canoptic Wraiths, so that's like a real old-school style build. 3 units of Tomb Blades, 3 units of Canoptic Wraiths, a Spearhead Detachment, 3 units of Locust Destroyers. Oh, hold on. This list is wild. So it's 1 Scorpic unit. We have no free detachments. We're paying for all of our detachments because it's Outrider and Spearhead. So we just pay 6 CP for detachments. All right. Well, good thing Silent King gives us some CP back. A Plasma Sight, Veil of Darkness Technomancer, 3 units of Wraiths, 3 units of Tomb Blade. So these are your utility units. The Wraiths are... I like the Wraiths as the utility unit. They're a little bit slower than the Ophidian Destroyers, but they're much tougher to kill. And there's oftentimes some situations where Canoptic Wraiths like simply don't, like randomly don't die and they steal objectives from you. I had that even on stream a little while ago. I had I think I over-smited with a smite. It didn't... I killed myself out of line of sight and left 1 Wraith on 1 wound who basically just like immediately flipped the game for my opponent because like it was able to survive. It fell back. It can fall back and charge. It charged into another objective that I didn't have OBSEC on. It OBSEC the objective way. It broke a banner. It prevented an action. I was like, holy crap. So I actually really like the Canoptic Wraiths despite the fact they're so expensive. The Tomb Blades also do the similar thing. And then a ton of Locust Destroyers. So I guess... Given the fact that Silent King himself doesn't get his own rerolls, we're just going to be taking units that can benefit from them. So we have a massive number of guns, 10 Gauss cannons and 5 destructors, plus a Chronomancer to help keep them alive, and you can Veil of Darkness one of these units to get the maximum damage out of it. And again, that's another thing that the Locust Destroyers do, is they give you an out for your Veil of Darkness. I often find that Necron players are so used to taking the Veil of Darkness, and because it's like the only good relic in that whole codex, and they're so used to taking it and then using it for melee that I see a lot of players like try to use it on like Scorpic Destroyers, and then like they'll full up a charge or whatever, and they'll be sad. But the power of that relic is redeploying ranged units and forcing your opponent to screen out a 24-inch gun rather than a 9-inch melee threat. Plus, the Silent King himself is really good at killing, a little bit less good now, but he's really good at killing like chaff screeners. So if your opponent has to screen aggressively to stop the Locust Destroyers from hitting you, the Silent King just gets to pick up free units basically over the course of the game. And the other Locust Destroyers get to do the same thing. And then once you have a really good Veil of Darkness drop, you can just like put Locust Destroyers down. They have +1 to hit, they reroll their ones, they full reroll for 2 CP, and they're just like, boop, kill one thing, pick one thing, it's dead. So that's a cool list. I actually really like that. It's a little bit interesting. This one, a little bit more standard. Also focused on the race. Dragon's Lair. Dragon's Lair with this Wraith love affair here. Wraiths and Locust Destroyers. This one, though, 26 Canoptic Scarab Swarms, plus a Catan Shot of the Nightbringer. 1 Spider. Do we have a Reanimator in this list? No Reanimator, so we're not the full Scarab combo, but we're pretty close. Plus a Deluminor Seraz. That's interesting. We're taking Seraz even though we can't buff the Silent King? Here's a question, chat. Can Seraz double revive Scarabs? I thought he revived only core units, but I might be mistaken there. Yeah, he only revives core units, so he actually doesn't work on the Scarab Swarm. So I'm not actually sure about that. That's Illuminor Sarah's pick in this list. Not entirely sure what he's doing there. That's interesting. All right, well, fair enough. Moving on, so we start to get some smaller events here, and we see some really interesting X and O's. So we have Harlequins at Brighton Warhammer 40k tournament, pretty standard. Bunch of player troops, bunch of Star Weavers, some Void Weavers, and then a patrol with more troops. Good stuff. We are playing Light Sadeth, so the change isn't affecting them too much. The change to the Light Sadeth, where you can't advance and shoot your thing. Yeah, he regens core, he regens warriors, he regens D3 warriors instead of just 1. But he can't regen scarabs, which is pretty weird. So these Harlequin player troops in transports no longer able to advance and shoot. I don't think the change actually really did too much to the faction. I think you have to nerf their stratagem if you actually wanted Harlequins to get depowered. Light Sadeth Harlequin specifically, to get depowered in a meaningful way. I don't think that just, you know, letting them do their fallback and do whatever thing is without any penalty is a-okay. It's interesting that we don't see Harlequins played more often because they are super strong. I did play against them over the weekend, and it was a tough game. 7th confrontation. This is kind of a classic loadout, right? We got Necrons. Pretty good faction. I think you can expect them to do well in an event. Chaos Demons, maybe one of, you know, I put them as the number 2 faction in the metagame right now. I kind of feel like the results from this weekend is vindicating my pick from that. People were like really pooping on me when I did my power ranking stream last week, and I said Chaos Demons were so strong, but we see so many Chaos Demons and Chaos Demons in other lists at these top placing positions, and I think that's pretty effective. And then Adeptus Sororitas definitely sort of top of the next tier down. This is a pretty standard Adeptus Sororitas list: 3 units of Sisters Repentia, 3 units of Zephyrum, 2 units of Retributors, some transports, good stuff. The Chaos Demons list here looks pretty standard. Bellicor, Bloodthirster. This is the Tank Thirster. So Blood Drinker Talisman, but no Brazen Hide. We took the Lord of Change as the Warlord to get the Incorporeal form. So he's -1 to be hit and wounded, I assume. Oh no, he has Master Mutator. Yeah, okay. So the Warlord trait is -1 to be wounded. He also does additional mortal wounds on a 2+ on top. That is a pretty good exalted effect, to be fair. 12 Zinch Flamers. 2 units of Demonettes, 2 units of Bloodletters. So a little bit of a different build than normal, than what we normally see, but I think pretty standard. It's kind of the same composition that I like to play, but the exacties are a little bit different. James Marsden, the guy who played Cyclops in the X-Men movies, yeah. I assume it's the exact same guy. When I was playing War Machine and Hordes, we had, speaking of sort of like, you know, name doppelgangers, we had a John Carter in the meta. I think he played in Florida, and but he was like a pretty good player, and you saw him all the time. And it was right after the John Carter Disney movie came out, and so every time his name would get called to an event or something, it would just be like, John Carter of Mars, of course. But yeah, turns out some people have the same names as other people. Did you know that could happen? It should be illegal to name people the same thing, but, you know, they haven't gotten around to it yet. So this list, James Marsden from X-Men is playing Relentlessly Expansionist Eternal Conquerors Necrons. He's an Overlord with a Tachyon Arrow. Don't see that guy every day. That's kind of exciting. A Technomancer, 1 Chronomancer, 1 Hexmark Destroyer, the Gauntlet of a Conflagrator. Yeah, I haven't seen this guy in ages. These guys got reduced to 65 points. That model is not bad for 65 points. The big downside of them is that they give up Assassinate like instantly. So if you're already playing 4 characters, you start to give up max Assassination, and it gets a little bit awkward. But man, the Hexmark Destroyer is such a tech piece. I kind of like it. You need to add a number at the end of the name of the duplicate. Yeah, it's like I'm John Smith, the 632,000th. Start to get like a cereal bar, like a barcode for your name. They have to scan you. You're like, oh, welcome back. You know, James Miller, number 43 million. Matt, did you just time out Dr. Rhino? Jesus Christ, dude. That is that is maybe I'm regretting giving you mod privileges, buddy. That was brutal. Dr. Rhino, I saw your message. How's it going? Welcome. He just said hi. Matt, that's not a timeoutable offense, all right? People are allowed to say hi in the chat. Hexmark Destroyers nasty into AdMech, 100%. Super good into AdMech. There's like a little bit of a what's the word? An argument to use him into demons because they drop a lot of like 10 model 1 wound infantry. The problem is that demonic invulnerability makes you very tough to kill with like only 6 attacks. So sometimes he just spikes really low. That's been my my experience too. I wish his AP was better or something. Like the problem is that he's like AP 1, right? He basically just bounces a lot of the times. Not that helps against demons, but it helps in a lot of other matchups. Shuma in the chat here, like asking me ban. Oh no, now everybody's saying hi. Like ban me, daddy. put your hand on my throat and throw me directly out of this chat. Jesus. 2 units of Canoptic Wraiths, 1 Tomb Blades, 1 Scarab Swarm, big Locust Destroyer unit, 2 Doom Scythes. We're on the flyer build. I love that these Locust Destroyer units are back in chat. I was talking them up for so long, and everyone was like, no, they're terrible. They never do any damage. It's only D3. And it was like, it's full rerolls, though. Like, I would just try them, and now every list has them. And I think that's the absolute right call. Name on all your list, your kid's like Elon Musk's kid. Oh, my God, dude. That, yeah, I can't imagine those people who, like, name their kids a bunch of, like, this is just alphanumeric, like, you know, signatures or whatever. All right, some other interesting lists here, chat. We got an Adeptus Custodes from Michael Cobb at 5-0. This is a smaller event. I think it was 18 players. What was the name of this event? Warzone Invicta. So a little bit smaller, but still 5-0 with Adeptus Custodes. So all you Adeptus Custodes fanboys out there, you can get a little bit of your fix. Talking about the faction, this is Shadow Keepers. I think if we're fighting a lot against Chaos Space Marines and Blood Angels, and I think Shadow Keeper certainly has a pretty good argument. And I guess also if we're fighting a lot against Chaos Demons, right? They can Grim Resolve to reduce your strength, which actually puts them to winning Custodians on 5s. Which makes things a lot tougher if you're saving on a 2 in or a 1 or a 2 or a 3 in cover. Yeah, so it changes the math quite a bit. You can also turn off the reroll 1s as well, so you can actually make your guys a little bit tough to kill for individual. I guess the Presidium Shield guys still save on 2s in cover. So forcing you maybe lose 1 Custodian guard if you pop the Grim Resolve there. So that actually makes a ton of sense in the into that matchup for sure. Born odds around 105 fever, buddy. I'm sorry. I hope you feel better soon. So this is Castellan's Mark, Shield Captain, just the Castellan's Mark. So you get the redeploy. She don't need to go Jet Bike, Shield Captain with Lock Warden. So if I remember correctly, ignores invuln saves on characters. With Tip of the Spear. We have 2 units of Prosecutors, 3 units of Custodian Guards, 1 unit of Alarus Custodians, and 3 units of Virtus Praetors. I've seen there's been a lot of Custodians lists moving back to the Virtus Praetors. I wonder, that's an interesting move for sure. And also with the salvo launchers, I do think that there's actually an argument to run Hurricane Bolters these days. The Hurricane Bolters are actually pretty good at killing. Keep talking about Zinch Flamers chat, but I think that's who you got to beat if you're expecting to play competitively. And I think the Virtus Praetor is very good at knocking down a bunch of Tzeentch Flamers on the way in. But obviously the Salvo Launchers are still super duper strong. More strong if they're in Emperor's Chosen, but you definitely want them to crack armor a little bit there. Goon Hammer Open. I believe this was streamed by Hellstorm Wargaming. So if you want to watch the games, I bet you could go check them out over there. We have a 6-0 Heretic Astartes. This is just Emperor's Children, I think. Interestingly, no allies here. Just had Abaddon in the Supreme Command slot. But otherwise, 2 5-person possessed squads, 10-man Terminators, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 Noise Marines, and then all the characters. A Demon Prince, interestingly, with Mantle of Traitors and Flames of Spite. So the reroll wounds and then mortal wounds. Or the, the reroll hits and then reroll wounds. So they're just full reroll for 2 CP, basically. The Dark Apostle with Illusory Supplication, Master of Possession with Liber Hereticus. Very good. We do have an Adeptus Sororitas at 5-1. Also Bloody Rose. Okay. Cool. I appreciate that, as an aside here, that we didn't... I think we touched on her result a little bit last week when we did our power ranking, but Ash C went 5-0 at a GT with Valorous Heart, Paragon Warsuits. And I'm glad that it made a splash in the Sisters community, because over on the Discord server, we've been getting reamed by that list for the last, 6 months. And I appreciate that now other people can experience how brutal that list is to play against. Goonhammer, I think, most interestingly, called that list not very resilient. Let me tell you, Goonhammer, you're wrong. That list sucks to fight. It's very hard to kill. We had a... he closed the stream and reopened each battle, never knew what the schedule was. Oh, sure, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's better for rewatchability since you compartmentalize all of the different games, but it definitely sucks for when you're watching it at the time. So, yeah, I don't, it is what it is. That's the problem with YouTube, honestly, I think. With, you have to create individual events for all of your different streams, so it's tougher to pop on and off than Twitch is. Kind of sucks. But it is what it is. That list is irrelevant because it dies to Tyranids. Yes, of course. I forgot, chat. Ashley Thompson in chat. Of course. Another, both a Tyranid and a Sororitas expert. Yeah, would just, quote unquote, just dies to Tyranids. I wish that was my experience. But it definitely was not. My experience was that I would always try to cast Smite, and then Ash would roll multiple 6s to auto-deny on all my Smites, and I would do very little damage, and I would kill I would kill all the Paragon Warsuits. You almost always, every time I played against this list, and every time I streamed this list, you would kill all the Mortifiers, and you would kill 1 unit of Paragon Warsuits, and then you'd feel really good about yourself, and then 6 Paragon Warsuits and Morvenval would kill your whole army. And that was every game, I swear. Yeah. What a wild list. Yeah, Chad, it was we talked about it a little bit last week. It was the Valorous Heart Paragon Warsuit list. I'll go grab it, actually. It was... Yeah, here we go. It was this one, chat. You can, if you go over to the replay channel, youtube.com/TacticalTortoiseTV, there's probably 5 or 6 games with this list on there. So if you want to see this list in action, you can go do that with Ash playing it, with Kian playing it. And it's pretty good. So... I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, yeah, so moving on. We're X1 here at Goonhammer. We have another Blood Angels. So we actually had 2 undefeated Blood Angels and an X1 this weekend. So Blood Angels had a great weekend. It'll be interesting to see if that continues or if people start to attack against Blood Angels specifically and actually start fighting them. But this one was, I think triple Death Company, 2 units of Thunderhammers, 1 with Power Swords. That's interesting, and Inferno Pistols. The Inferno Pistols is interesting because it gives you a little bit of optionality. I didn't talk about this when I talked about the list in my video yesterday, but the Fury of the Lost actually doesn't care what phase you kill the unit in. So there are situations where your opponent like forward deploys or pre-game moves, or like forward deploys transports or something like that. And the Death Company Marines can just Forlorn Fury, move 12, activate, move 12, like stand next to the transport, shoot it with 5 Inferno pistols, like CP reroll, try to convert a hit, kill the transport, then try to charge the unit inside. Even if they don't charge the unit inside, they've already scored their 3 points for Fury of the Lost. So having the Inferno pistols in one of the Death Company Marine squads is actually super choice, because it gives you just like every once in a while you have the situation where you're just like, I'll just spike a Rhino and then that'll be my score. I'm done. We did it. Pretty good. We have 3 units of Sanguinary Guard, 2 Inferno pistols each, and 5 in Carmine swords. Second patrol detachment, we have Dante as the Warlord to give us a CP back. 1 Infiltrator Squad, 1 Sanguinary Ancient with Wrath of Baal. Pretty stock standard. 2 Eliminator Squads with Last Fusiles, 1 Suppressor Squad, that's interesting to see. For 100 points, it's a pretty good long-range unit to have. I wonder if you can even like put it in Deep Strike and with the grab shoots, right? And then drop it in and score like Death from above, but I don't know if you really want to do that. They're also just really fast, so they can score Engage and Relentless Assault really well. So I definitely understand the pick there. I think I like the suppressors. We have an Assault Squad with a bunch of free upgrades. Yeah, it looks like 2 Plasma Pistols, an Inferno Pistol, and a Lightning Claw on the Sergeant. Assault Squads are so sick. They need to give Tactical Marines the Assault Squad treatment with all of the free weapon upgrades, because Assault Squads as a utility unit are pretty good, but then also, like randomly, they're a delivery system for the Space Marine Sergeant who has like 5 or 6 attacks at +1 to wound with full rerolls. +2 Plasma Pistols, just in case, like every once in a while you accidentally like blow somebody up. And for 90 points for a unit that's just basically putting banners down and completing retrieve Nephilim data, it's a pretty good deal. We have some Harlequins and some Necrons here. I imagine the Necrons are just kind of normal. It's a Deceiver Necron list. Do we have planes? No planes. But that's fun. An auxiliary support with the Deceiver in it. Silent King. Technomancer. Nightbringer. 10 Lich Guards, units of Canoptic Scarabs. 3 more units of Locust Destroyers. Chat, it's just a Locust Destroyer world, and we're just living in it here, chat. Like everybody's rocking the 3 units of Locusts. This one's 2 heavies and 1 standard unit. We have a Veil of Darkness on the Technomancer, so we can teleport 1 unit around. Plus, you have the redeploy off the Catan shard, so you could potentially like put them in. You could put them in cover, right, and then redeploy them to the front, and then pregame move them, and then move them and like alpha strike your opponent. That's also potentially possible. Definitely works as well for the planes, because the Deceiver can put them into reserve, which makes it a lot tougher to, or makes it super tough to kill them before they get to do anything. So that's the best situation is when you can redeploy planes into reserve, which is why you see them occasionally in Eldari, because you can Phantasm them in Ynnari specifically. But that makes it so that the plane list can always like either alpha or beta strike you, and the Necron list is so strong going first that gives you like a very, very high win percentage on the going first, because you can start Ancient Machinerying like your opponent's side of the table on turn 1 with a pregame move plus a Tomb Blade. Then you also get to do a bunch of damage to them with the planes themselves. And if you go second, it's not the end of the world, because if your opponent has good shooting, they don't even get to kill the planes. Pretty good. Exclamation point lists, chat. Hopefully we'll get you there. That gets you to the website. It's discountgamesincorporated.com is the name of the site. There's a little tournament page, and it has all of the top lists from recent tournaments. All right, we're kind of on the home stretch here. A lot of small events this weekend, which I thought was really interesting. I don't know why that was in particular. It might have been that I think a lot of these were in the UK. So just the fact that we had like 3 or 4 smaller GTs means that they all split the player base apart, and so we had a bunch of like 20 to 24 person GTs this weekend. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 6 24-man GTs. Yeah, so Brighton, plus Goonhammer Open took a bunch of people, I imagine, in the UK. Ice Hammer, I think that's Scandinavia. Saffron Slam was UK. Rapid Fire is UK. I don't know where GaleCon is. I think that's in US, but pretty interesting. Oh, weird. The bot's giving the old list command, chat. I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, bot. I don't know, man. Oh, it says it's not in the channel. What? This bot's wild. Whatever. We have the Nurgle Matt bot. He can post the Discount Games Inc. link, and he can randomly ban you for saying hi. So, you know, he's a multi-purpose robot. Beep boop. So we'll go through all of these lists. We saw a couple Tyranid lists at 5-0. Yokel Johansson with Tyranids. This one on High Fleet Kraken. A little bit of a different list because we kept the Harpies, which I thought was really interesting. Heavy Venom Cannon Harpies as well. So we're just going all in. We have Synaptic Enhancement so they can get the Invulnerable Save on turn 1. And the interesting part about the Kraken list is that because you're not compounding the Invulnerable Save from the Zoanthrope Imperative with anything else. Like with Tyranids, you're compounding it with Transhuman and maybe -1 damage and -1 to hit. Kraken, oftentimes, your Raveners are either leaving the aura and they just die, or they just are only protected by a 5-up Invulnerable Save. So you actually don't really care about the Invulnerable Save in the mid-game. You're kind of just like relying on your boatload of wounds to keep you alive. So popping it turn 1 regardless, just to keep the Harpies alive, kind of makes sense. And they are significantly easier to kill than they are in Leviathan, but no, it's not too bad. We have Tyrant Guard, Zoanthropes, Neurothrope, 1-Winged Hive Tyrant, 3 Tyranid Warriors, 4 Raveners with Scything Talons, and then a second Hive Tyrant. So this is Shard Gullet Hive Tyrant on the ground. I think that sort of ended up being the build, is the double Hive Tyrant build. It definitely gives you, like, one Hive Tyrant's a really good psychic action caddy, and then the other one can go out and fight people. And having like a Hive Tyrant standing next to a Tyrant Guard unit, so it's unshootable, either with Shard Gullet or with the standard Heavy Venom Cannon, is enough of a threat to keep people's heads down. You don't necessarily need too much other shooting. Like sometimes you have some occasional Venom Cannons and maybe like a Terrain Effect or something, but that's enough to make people consider their deployment, because you don't want to be taking like 12 damage from a Venom Cannon every turn if you're just giving it to your opponent. Yeah, Nergomat is a great mod until he bans you. It's true. So this list, so it's the 2-3 warriors, the 2 3-man warrior squads, a 4, a 5, and a 6-man Ravener squad. Oh, this is a 4-man warrior squad. That's okay. So we're all in on Raveners this time around. This is 8. A 4, a 5, and an 8 model Ravener unit. All Scything Talons, by the way. All Scything Talons all the time. Now, do we have a direct guidance in this list? We do, on the Neurothrope. Love it. Now, the one thing that I've been finding that these lists have been missing, and it's hard to fit them in because Raveners are kind of expensive, is Tyranid Prime. Because the Tyranid Prime gives you an additional super useful imperative. It gives you exploding 6s, which is good if you have this many Death Spitters, because this is, 13, 17, 21, 27 Death Spitters. Giving those all exploding 6s is mathematically equivalent to +1 to hit. So giving 27, so 81 attacks +1 to hit is pretty good. Plus, he gives you rerolls on the biggest unit that's going in. And with the Scything Talons, because your AP isn't the highest, you want to be converting as many attacks as possible to force as many saves on people. And so getting that reroll once to wound is like kind of a really big deal. That is a ton of Raveners, chat. So this list is really cool. Now, the one thing that makes me sad here is how much more useful the classic Hive Tyrant is, the Shard Gullet Hive Tyrant, or just the Heavy Venom Cannon Hive Tyrant. I want to call it like a Battleship Tyrant, but it's not like the actual Battleship Tyrant that has 2 guns. It doesn't feel quite as good. But the Cannon Tyrant is just operates in more phases than Swarmlord does, which is unfortunate because I think Swarmlord is really good for this type of list because you're going to be trading Raveners onto objectives. Swarmlord kind of removes the necessity to take direct guidance. If you're giving a unit full rerolls, you don't really need +1 to hit on it. It's like mathematically the same. So you save yourself a CP there. And giving the unit objective secured is real big deal for a unit that moves as quickly as Raveners do and kills enemy chaff as well as Raveners do. So, yeah, I don't know. I would, like, Swarmlord's pretty good, but the problem is that that's all he does. He basically, like, he's a little bit better than a regular Hive Tyrant in melee, but he has no ranged attacks whatsoever. He's not appreciably better at casting psychic powers, and he's more expensive. So you have to like consider whether having a sick gun in your army is as good as getting OBSEC on some Raveners sometimes. And the problem is that it's just not a lot of times. But I think that if Swarmlord was like a little cheaper, like he should be equivalent to a foot hive, like a cannon Hive Tyrant, in my opinion. Then I think you would see him a lot more, which is unfortunate. Parasite takes the slot. I would honestly take a Tyranid Prime over a Parasite, but that's me. That's my weird thing. Gonna try a Kronos shooting list with a Shard Gullet? Hell yeah. Yeah, Kronos isn't too bad, honestly. I think it's Sub-Faction's pretty okay. Especially because it's a lurk. It has lurk biomorphs, so you can give OBSEC to monsters and then still benefit from like the +1 strength on guns. We have Saffron Slam, Franco McDonald with a relatively standard demons list. This one's 50 demonettes, so it's like the demonet spam list we saw earlier. One's Fate Skimmer, Transweaver, 15 Flamers, 30 Bloodletters, and Bellicor. So only the one Greater Demon, but obviously spamming a ton of objectives secured. It's nice to see the Demon Infantry seeing some play. Because compared, like on a model per model basis, compared to other OBSEC like chaff, they're way better. The problem is that they're so expensive that it's tough to wrap your head around trading them for objectives. But because Flamers can sort of like because Flamers trade up so hard, honestly, you don't necessarily need to be like doing maximum damage with your one wounders with your troops options. The Flamers will do like 200 points of damage for a 100-point unit. And the rest of your guys for a 120-point unit will do 100 points of damage. So you can kind of like pick up the slack for the Flamers. And you end up doing a normal amount of damage for the army. But if you're trying to fight 10 Demonettes with like 10 of any other troops option in the game, the Demonettes almost always win every time. Swarmlord needs to have adrenal glands built in. I don't know if necessarily. Like, I don't know if I've ever been like, oh man, you know what the problem with Swarmlord is you can't adrenaline surge him. It's like, okay, I guess I can't, but that stratagem's almost always on warriors or somebody else anyway. We have a classic Craft World Eldar at 5-0 chat from Colin Power as well. And this one is an interesting one, and maybe somebody in chat's able to help me out here. Because it's running a custom Craft World. And I was racking my brain before the stream to try to figure out what this custom Craft World was doing. It's bringing Masterful Shots, which is great. Ignore cover. Love it. Perfect. The second sub-faction ability is Swift Strikes, which is when you shoot, you count as stationary unless you fell back, I believe. You can advance and shoot your guns all the time, which seems great. But Battle Focus already ignores the advance and shoot penalty. And to my knowledge, and this may be a local ruling thing, you can't Battle Focus after you advance full stop because the counts as remain stationary rules doesn't include a clause that states you can, basically. I'm not sure that you can advance and still battle focus, chat, because the remain stationary rules are broke. They're so bad. They basically just allow you to. They basically just allow you to shoot, and they allow you to ignore the penalty for advancing and shooting when you're firing an assault weapon. But they don't have. It doesn't stop you from having advanced. So because you still advanced and you remain stationary, penalties associated with advancing that are not explicitly stated by the rare rules section, to my knowledge, are not ignored. So I'm not sure you can advance in battle focus with that sub-faction ability, which makes it pretty worthless because Battle Focus already allows you to ignore most of the detriments anyway if you were just doing that. Yeah, it's probably depends on the local ruling, chat, but that rule's bad. It's so bad. I imagine, I think that there's a can of worms that you open if you straight up just count them as remaining stationary, and you supersede the fact that the unit has advanced. But I wish they would have just done that. Like, you know, I haven't put too much thought into it, but I'm sure there's ways that you could fix that role without making it an absolute nightmare. Because right now it is a nightmare. It's like a full page long, and it's just a list of things you get to ignore when you count as remaining stationary. It's so stupid. Yeah, the problem isn't it's not in the Eldar Codex. The answer to that question isn't in the Eldar Codex, it's in the Rail Rules document. It sucks. Everything sucks. The Eldar book released in like a broken state and is still not really fixed, honestly. Case in point, Webway Gates still break your Strands of Fate dice. What a time. What a time to be alive. Good stuff. All right, anyway, talking about some stuff. We have a Seer Council, 2 Seer Councils, Foot Council, and a single Warlock Skyrunner. 2 Farseers, so all in on our Psychers here. So yeah, we have a Quicken unit, a Quicken guy, so we can probably do psychic actions pretty effectively. A Faithful Divergence guide guy, Doom Executioner guy. So we can yo-yo the 1 Skyrunner that's doing mad damage. We can also, I guess, just quicken the individual Skyrunner, right, to do actions as well, to do warp rituals in the center. 1 unit of Rangers. Those guys do benefit from the sub-faction, by the way, full stop. They can, like, advance and shoot all their guns without penalty, which is kind of sick. Howling Banshees, Striking Scorpions, 2 individual Vipers, another unit of Howling Banshees, Dire Avengers, some Shining Spears, Kane's Lance, and Heartstrike Wombo combo on the Exarch there, alongside 3 Shroud Runners, 2 units of Swooping Hawks. No Behareth, though. Oh, no, there he is. Just kidding. I just skipped right over him. He's so small. So he does give those guys objectives secured, which is good. Plus, he's probably the best single model in the game. 2 units of Warp Spiders, 2 Warwalkers. I love this list, chat. Just mass MSU, effectively. And in a situation where you can battle focus after you advance, the fact that you have so many units jumping around the table getting really good lanes of fire is actually pretty solid. So I love that. All right, good stuff. That's an interesting list, and that's cool. Last but certainly not least, we got Mr. Goonhammer himself, Innes Wilson, at a 5-0 with Tyranids. This is, I think, mostly going to be what we just talked about. It is no Spore Assist, so I imagine they didn't house rule the Spore Assist in, this was Rapid Fire 2022? Yeah, I imagine they didn't house rule the fortifications there, so the Spore Assist is probably significantly less playable in formats that they don't make rules specifically making it good. We have Winged Hive Tyrant with Reaper of Obliterax, Alien Cunning Parasite of Mortrax, 5 Raveners, 3 Biovores, 2nd Patrol Detachment. This one does have the Swarm Lord. Hey, we just talked about him. There he is. 10 more Raveners, 3 Zoanthropes, 3 more Zoanthropes. Hell yeah. So we're on double Zoanthropes. There's no Neurothrope in this list, right? Am I right? No, there is a Neurothrope. Just kidding. With Direct Guidance. So we have Direct Guidance and the Swarm Lord, which is sick. So 1 unit can get +1 and reroll 1s from the Winged Hive Tyrant. Another unit can get full rerolls from the Swarm Lord, and you basically have 2 units that are fully supercharged. And then Swarm Lord can give units objective secured, and they can move 20 inches and then charge onto an objective. And I don't know if we took the... yeah, he didn't put down, I believe, what adaptive he took, but I imagine that he took +1 to charge. So they basically go like 21 and then charge, which is pretty good. Eldar or Thousand Suns the fastest army in the game? That is like... That's like comparing... I don't know. That's like comparing a race car to molasses, chat. Thousand Suns are slow AF. The Thousand Suns only have mobility because they charge, or because they teleport. But teleporting is weird mobility because you can't actually go everywhere on the table. So you can move infinitely, but only into like spots where your opponent allows you to go, which usually means unless you're really good at making charges out of deep strike, unless you got some weighted dice and always roll 9s, you usually actually don't go. You don't go really wherever you want to go. But I think Eldar are certainly the most maneuverable army in the game, I think. Tyranids are up there, specifically High Fleet Kraken. And then, yeah, I mean, you can just count, like, I think every Eldar subfaction outside Drukhari. Drukhari are just very fast, but they're not, like, the fastest. But it probably goes Craft Worlds, and then Harlequins. And then, I don't know, it'd be the third, chat. I'm gonna look through my faction list here. I guess Tyranids would be like number 3, and then we start getting into like some other factions, like maybe Blood Angels are in there. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. Mostly those ones. Some Space Marine sub factions, I guess. Anyway, Tau Empire, I guess. Tau Empire are in there somewhere. Dr. Rhino's back. Welcome back, Dr. Rhino. Too busy figuring how to go 5-0 with all Wraith units for Eldar. Orcs? Orcs are very fast for 1 turn. And then they go back to being relatively slow. But that 1 turn is pretty scary, so orcs are doing pretty well. But that's all the lists for the weekend, chat. I think we can definitely start to see the effects of the data slate. Tyranids are still strong, but are not just like far and away the best faction. Their X and O's were mostly in smaller events, and they didn't win any of the big events. We saw some Blood Angels doing really well. We saw a couple undefeated Blood Angels, which was awesome, and X and 1 Blood Angels. Necrons are still up in there, and then Chaos Demons were kind of the breakout, I think. Chaos Demons, either Chaos Demons or Chaos Space Marines plus Demons. I should say, should we just call it like the Chaos Demons are like Tzeentch Flamers, right? Like Tzeentch Flamers are the best faction in the game. Any army that can take Tzeentch Flamers in it immediately pumps to like number 2 in the game. Full stop. Ynnari, yeah, Ynnari. Ynnari are certainly in there. I think Ynnari and Craft Worlds basically do the same thing because all of the fastest stuff in Ynnari is just the Craft World stuff. It's like Behareth, it's the Swooping Hawks. All that stuff is super duper fast. Yeah, Demons and Chaos Space Marines absolutely destroying things right now, for sure. I think that's where we're at currently. So if you're going to be planning to play competitively in the next couple weeks, you gotta have answers to Tzeentch Flamers. Get your anti-Overwatch in there. A lot of people were talking about, Whirlwinds in that Blood Angels list to suppressing fire and turn off Overwatch on Tzeentch Flamer units. If you have like random assault launchers and stuff like that, any way you can engage with those guys and prevent them from shooting you is a really big deal. Infiltrators will probably come back in a big way because the Flamers can't teleport to shoot them, so you can actually screen them out effectively. We're talking a lot about Space Marines, but I'm sure there's going to be some other pieces of technology in there. And then also just bringing units that the Flamers trade down into. So, if you have 5 model infantry squads you can take to screen them, that's a really big deal as well. To force them to come in, and then doing mortal wounds back to them is the best way to remove them once they drop onto the table. You don't have to deal with Overwatch. You don't have to deal with invulnerability saves. You just plink them for a couple mortals. Although, to be fair, their points per wound are very good, so you actually feel kind of bad mortal wounding them, but at least you don't get them to take D3 saves. Dr. Rhino, how's it going? How you doing? Dr. Rhino, I owe you some assembled blood letters, and I haven't. It hasn't left my mind yet. I just haven't had time to assemble blood letters within the last week. I've been making so many videos, chat. I hope you watched all my videos. I made a ton of videos over the last couple of days, which has been super fun. But I think that's it, chat. Do we have anything else to talk about? Should we chill out for a bit? Anybody have any fun stuff going on? Any questions? I do owe you many things, Dr. Rhino. I owe you a big hug. How's that? Hope everyone had a good Halloween once again. I didn't do anything for Halloween. So Halloween's a little bit funky for me because it's my sister's birthday. She was born on Halloween. And she was born on Halloween, no cap, with red and black hair. She had like a little bit of hair when she came out because she was a little bit late. And she's a redhead, and she had like a little bit of black hair, which is hilarious so she's a very festive child. So we always do, her birthday party is always on Halloween, so I didn't do anything particularly exciting. Flamers going to 30 points. I imagine, yeah. I mean, if they didn't hit Flamers in the data slate, they're definitely going to hit them in 3 months in the points update. Probably 35 points, I imagine. They might just like slap them to like 40 and be like, we're done with this unit. Just get them out of here. But we'll see. Do I feel that Kraken has replaced Leviathan in the meta? 100%. Leviathan feels like actively kind of bad now. So the one benefit that Leviathan has is the psychic power, but Kraken is just so consistent. You know, it's so good already. But I also think that Leviathan being nerfed also opens up situations where other sub-factions can also come play. So like I was saying before, I was playing some Behemoth over the weekend. I think Behemoth is pretty okay, and I think like there's arguments to play like Jormungandr and even like Gorgon as well. So I think Kraken's the best for sure, and probably the most consistent into the widest variety of matchups. But I do think that that's fine. Overboard miniature game painting 2 boxes of Into the Dark terrain right now? That sounds brutal. That is a lot of terrain in that box. For sure. Question, what new Imperial Guard units could help Genestealer Cult? The weird part about the Imperial Guard stuff in Genestealer Cult is that Genestealer Cult don't play that game. Like, I mean, maybe if their guns are good and you can just, and you like, I guess like if their guns are really strong and you just get like a really good shooting platform and then plus the frontline stuff that Genestealer cults do, but mixing two factions is so weird. The only army that does it effectively like is Ynnari, but just the fact that all of these faction abilities and special rules like don't intersect at all. You're just like. You're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, and it doesn't feel to me like Genestealer cults really need Militarum units. But it could be that like the one thing that Genestealer cults are missing is like really strong range support. And if like Leman Russ or the Rogel Dorn is like really efficient for points, and you can just spend a bunch of CP on taking them, like maybe it's fine. But I think we're also probably going to see a rework to the Brood Brothers ability, I imagine. So I think that's fine. 1,000 people visiting Necromancer Goblin? Holy crap. With a name like Necromancer Goblin, I would hope that you had a good Halloween plan, for sure. That is super cool. That was the street I grew up on when I was a kid, or the town I grew up in had one street that was like the Halloween highway, and every house on it got really into it. But there were a couple houses with big front yards, and they would set up like a whole like an interactive experience almost. Like one did like a haunted graveyard, and one did like a zombie wedding, and then like the whole family would dress up and scare people. It was like pretty into it, so I imagine that's got kind of the same vibe. Serious Ink painting Votan Duders. A little sad, yeah. Well, hopefully Leagues of Votan can come out swinging with all their stuff. Once all their units are released, because their current win rate isn't that great. Their results they haven't been putting up great results with post mad nerfs that they got. Pretty insane. I think I went too far on the nerfs, but we'll have to see. All right, chat. I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up there. But thanks, everyone, for hanging out with me. Oh, my God. I got something in my throat real bad. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me. We got some interesting results this weekend, and I think the game is just going to be more interesting as we move on through this most recent metagame. It definitely feels like basically every codex has play. The only codexes that we're not seeing represented, Death Guard are feeling bad right now. Grey Knights are feeling bad right now. Chaos Knights are feeling bad. But other than that, you know, Astra Militarum around the corner, so they're going to shake things up. And I guess Mechanicus. But everything else is like sort of creeping up a little bit. We could, you know, I don't know. We could probably see a little bit more Gene Stealer cults and like some of the Imperial factions, but for the most part, I do think that like Death Guard, Chaos Knights, Grey Knights, I think like need a little bit of a revision, and then we'll see how Astra Militarum change things up. Anyway, thanks everyone. I'm gonna be streaming tomorrow for sure, 100%. I'm gonna stream over on the Purple channel, so go give me a follow over there. I think I need to sit down and just grind some games to work out a Tyranid list that I want to play. So either it's going to be like Behemoth, Monster Spam, or we'll maybe try some Kraken stuff. I don't know yet. We'll figure it out. But I'm definitely going to sit down and play some games. There are some event finals coming up, but I just haven't gotten a time frame for those. But those will be live at some point. And keep checking out the replay channel. Check out all the VODs I'm making. You can also expect probably 2 more videos over the course of the rest of the week. So it's going to be good stuff. Anyway, thanks everyone. Whew. I'll go ahead and hop off, but thanks for chilling. Remember to keep it classy, folks. Have happy wargaming, and until next Tuesday.